Damian, a really good game last weekend after Queen Elizabeth's death. It was a fantastic way to commemorate her with a brilliant game of rugby, really.
Yeah, it would have been a shame, obviously, if the game had been called off. It would have been understandable, but I just think it's one of those things where it was a really good chance for everyone to get together, and actually that kind of start of the game where we did the national anthem, the minute silence, and then some words from their chaplain, I think was a really good way to remember, what was actually a really huge day for the country as a whole, and to actually be able to have some kind of way to remember and mark it, I thought was really special.
And in terms of the performance itself, apart from Dan Collier being injured, it was a decent squad going into it, and then some of the squad got stuck on the M5, and so to come up with a win, that must have been such a relief after a really difficult day.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where some of the adversity and some of the issues that we had to deal with last year actually came, to our rescue in some ways, because it was one of those situations where, to some degree we've had a lot of things to deal with last year, and a lot of hardship to go through, and a lot of things that weren't perfect, and yet we were still there. So I think actually a lot of those experiences we were able to lean upon. Not ideal having to put the kickoff back by a couple of hours, and then obviously some of the boys didn't make it until right at the death of the game. But I think what was pleasing was that we were managed to come away with 5 points. And obviously not an ideal performance, which it was never going to be given the makeup of the side in terms of guys being chucked into various positions last minute. But I think that fighting spirit is something that we started to develop last year as a necessity, really, and I think it's actually something that stands in good stead, and that's one of the major reasons why we got the 5 points.
It's difficult, of course, as a coach, I guess, to assess a performance given that you started the game differently, I guess, to how you planned to do so. But what did you make of that performance overall, and was there any aspects of the game where you thought maybe we could have just done a little bit better there?
Oh, there's always aspects that we can pick on. That's it's our job to go through and find areas we can improve, and bits that we're maybe less happy with. I think obviously some of our structure and stuff was kind of maybe off, but then you can understand that, bearing in mind we once again had to shift guys around last minute. A lot of guys who weren't supposed to be starting suddenly catapulted onto the starting spots, and then that kind of trickle down effect from there. So whilst there's parts of it that we can obviously look at and say, well, we can do this better. You've got to obviously take that with a huge dose of realism in terms of the fact that we did as best as we could with what we had, and I think the boys can take great pride in the performance. I'd rather win scrappy with things that we can look to clear up in the week and details we can change. I'd rather win scrappy in that situation than have a perfect performance but come out with no points.
So some decent points on the table already. We come to the first home game of the season, the first time this season that we're going to have fans here at Brickfields cheering the team on in a league game. You must be excited for it. Yeah,
I think everyone's excited. It's been a tough September with three away games to start with, and it's nice to actually get back and kind of almost kick our season off in some ways. It's good to have those 7 points on the board already, which obviously took us a fair few games to get to that stage last year. But for us, I know the players will be excited that actually this is the first chance that friends and family, supporters, people they know who turn up and watch us week in, week out, travel across the country, it's the first chance they get to come along and actually put a show on for them. So I think everyone's pretty excited, and hopefully we can transform that kind of excitement and that energy onto the pitch.
And when those people do come to Brickfields, the players, the family, the fans as well, who haven't been here since last season, it feels like they're going to be coming here to watch a different Plymouth Albion, a better Plymouth Albion.
Yeah, I think obviously it's like anything. I think familiarity helps a lot in this game, and I think obviously last season, we've now got a group of guys, most of whom have played together for a year, whereas at the beginning of last season we probably had 17 guys who never played with each other, in at all. So I think that has got a lot to answer in terms of where a lot of the ideas and stuff and things that we were trying to implement last year. It's like anything, it takes time, takes repetition, and obviously we have that season under our belts to do that. And I'd like to think that obviously, if things keep progressing as I think they probably will and as they should, with the kind of the player-driven mentality we've got here at the moment, we'd like to think that obviously it will be a different Plymouth Albion this year, and we should be looking, to look at the other end of the table perhaps rather than what we did last year.
4 changes to the starting lineup. Dan Collier's back in. We've also got George, Jack and Phil coming back into the starting 15. So just a word on Dan Collier. He's all good after that little shoulder knock last week?
Yeah, it was one of those ones where we originally kind of feared the worst, and I think we were discussing possible tears, etc. But actually it looks to have just been a bit of a heavy knock, which has come through, and obviously someone like Dan adds a lot to our scrum and our maul, so our tight game should benefit from him being fit, so that's obviously a big bonus for us.
And again, really, it's kind of the same as last week. You've got those changes now that you can call upon, whereas last season it was almost sporadic in the sense that you didn't necessarily know what squad you have, whereas this season you have a very good idea of that, and that must be quite reassuring now.
Yeah, it is. We've obviously got a lot of guys that can slot in, and it also, with the greatest will in the world, it keeps guys hungry. I think the fact of the matter is that these days, myself and Ryan can look at players, and if we feel that someone's performing better than someone else, we can actually slot them in these days. And the knock-on effect of that will naturally be that the players who get pushed aside will fight that much harder to get their spots back. So it should drive competition across the board, and that should drive standards.
Are you seeing that as well in the squad, in training, in the gym, in all of that?
I think the biggest difference for me this year has been that the feeling around camp feels a lot different. It does feel more competitive. It does feel like, rather than last year where it's very difficult to go for a season like last year without big periods of feeling sorry for yourselves. And, this year that's kind of been swept aside a little bit, and it's been replaced by, that kind of hunger, competitive edge, just that desire to come and actually better ourselves. And I think it's one of those things that sounds kind of cliche, but actually it has been much more noticeable this year. And I think that's probably what's going to keep driving us up the table. Hopefully we'll just see how we can finish, really.
And in terms of the squad just coming into this weekend, there's no other injury concerns. Everyone's good to go.
No, I think there's nothing new to report. It's pretty much, the kind of core of the squad that we're picking from is all still fit, which hopefully that continues. We don't get ourselves in the situation we had last year.
Damian, thanks very much.
No problem.
Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.